What's up, and welcome to Unmotive Show. Today we'll be speaking with Eric McCoy. He is a substance abuse counselor who has been a program director, clinical director, and executive director. He is also a recovered addict who changed his life after he was given a second chance by the court system. He has also written a book called Pain, Failure, and Misery Are the Stepping Stones to Success, and he hosts two podcasts called High While Clean and Walk a Mile in My Shoes. Today we will be talking about how substance abuse involves mental health and more. Hi, Eric.
How you doing, man?
Oh, I'm doing great. I'm doing great. It's really good having you on here. I really wanted to talk about mental health and also substance abuse because I've been I definitely have been in substance abuse counseling and also mental health counseling, and it's something that's personal to me. I have some lived experience with it. So yeah. I understand you're pretty active today in the area of recovery. Can you tell me a little more about how you got there and what you're up to today?
Well, drugs brought me there. I had many years of methamphetamine was my drug of choice, and it literally almost killed me. I mean, I would say in 2002 or 2001, I was arrested. Between 2001 and 2002, I was arrested 4 times in 6 months. I was looking at 15 years in prison, and luckily I didn't get that. But I was given an opportunity. A judge did give me a kind of a last ditch effort to do something different, and I took it and ran with it. Went to school, became a counselor, became very passionate, about working with people. I love working with people. I love helping people. I love watching people succeed in recovery, and yeah, that's kind of been my, sort of where I, got to today is just love people, love helping people, love working with people. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, yeah. So you're passionate about helping people. I mean, I actually so I have some DUIs in my history.
Hmm.
That's where I go, and I was actually because of my mom getting involved, and when I got my third DUI, I was put into mental health counseling, mental health court, and from there on, I started taking medications that really helped, and I was able to get quite a few years of sobriety under my belt. And I'm also like, because of the help I've gotten in the system, I've thought about becoming a social worker and trying to give back that way.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
So I guess since we're on the topic of substance abuse and mental health, I wanted to ask you how you think that substance abuse is like mental health and like how they relate.
Yeah, I think like I look at my life growing up. I think I had depression, dealt with depression, at a young age, and and it's we talk about that idea of self-medication, self-medicating. And I think a lot of people, I mean, I would say probably about 80% of people that have a substance abuse problem have some form of brain dysfunction, that can play out in, excuse me, whether it be depression, anxiety disorders. I mean, obviously, even much more severe, schizophrenia. Yeah, sorry, schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, um, and yeah, I think they absolutely go hand in hand. I mean, out of all the years that I've worked in the field, we see it all the time.
Yeah, so in those cases, I mean, I've heard of the term self-medicating. I don't like to call it self-medicating
Mhm.
because I feel like it's more of a physical ailment, but it's something you can kind of work out and like exercise. Like I try meditation. I do breathing exercises sometimes. I do hand exercises, and a whole bunch of coping skills. So it's like I actually am kind of a proponent for like holistic methods
Mhm.
more, and I'm trying to learn more of those to help me. And medications are good, and I don't have anything against medications, although like it's kind of a funny story. So my last name is Ajayi Dopemu, and it's got the word dope in it, and you know what dope is, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I'm like kind of like conscribed to be drug taker, and right
Drug
now I'm
user.
like, yeah, yeah, right now I'm like definitely on a lot of medication, not a lot of medications, but some medication. So I feel like I was kind of conscribed to do that.
Yeah. I think I mean, obviously you got the much more severe mental illnesses, that I do think that medication is a necessity for some. I definitely by far have ADHD, which is again the most overdiagnosed thing, for a lot of people,
Mm,
something I've struggled with a lot. I don't take meds. I absolutely
yeah,
refuse to take meds because the treatment for that is very closely related to my drug of choice, being methamphetamine. They typically treat it with an amphetamine, which would send me in a tailspin. I know it would. Um, and but yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things, depression, for instance, even for people that have major depression and, even to the point of suicidal ideations and things like that, medications aren't a cure all for any of those things. You can, take an antidepressant medication, but you do have to put those life skills in place, like you had mentioned with exercise, um, like the hand stuff. Do you have anxiety? Is that kind of the
yeah, I have anxiety, mostly anxiety. Yeah, that's what I'm doing it for. And yeah, so just basically helps me with focusing and like getting out of the moment. Hey, so as far as the hand exercise I'm doing, do you ever prescribe anything to your patients or tell them to do things like that for their anxiety or anything else, like holistic methods like meditation, breathing exercises, or even hand exercises?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, meditation's good. Not everybody does well with medication
Mm,
or meditation. Some people, you kind of have to have that ability to really quiet your mind down. And so for people that have uh, serious anxiety, that can be a tough one.
yeah.
But exercise is definitely something I would say is probably the greatest, you know, alternative to to medications for anxiety. At least yeah. The problem with treatment for anxiety is like if you look at the best medication, quote unquote medication treatment is benzodiazepines, which are highly addictive. Which are, if you take a benzo as prescribed for a year, your body will become physically dependent upon it. And just that's taking it as prescribed. And so it's, so for like panic disorders and things like that, really the best thing is those. So, coming from the addiction world, it is about finding something else. It is about finding an alternative that can help, with help those people who deal with that stuff. So, yeah, it's a tough one, you know.
Yeah, right. My medications actually help me with sleep too, and I found I got dependent on them for sleep. And I just got off one of them that's more for sleeping, and I've had to go exercise every day as much as I can to go to sleep at the end, and I kind of wear myself
Yeah,
out.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Exercise has some of the greatest benefits to it. Is it gives you energy, when you exercise, and then it also helps you sleep better, you know. And so I mean, there's so many therapeutic benefits to it. My favorite, my favorite therapeutic is laughter.
Yeah, that's a good one.
You got to laugh a lot, laugh more in life.
Yeah, so I was trying to. I actually believe that, and like this one of the reasons I started this season on mental health was I wanted to make it a little more fun to talk about mental health because I felt like that would reduce the stigma that's surrounding it. And
Mhm.
so that's the next subject I wanted to talk about was like how do you think the how's the stigma of substance use and mental health related, or how do you can you talk about one or the other one?
I think the stigma is one of the reasons that a lot of people are dying, honestly. I mean, obviously you've got fentanyl and you've got, the drug that's killing more people than anything, but the stigma itself is what keeps people from getting help. You keep this stigma around it that drug addicts are bad people. You know, I mean, how many times do you go to like the gas station and you see people that like are homeless that want to come talk to you, and you're just kind of try to ignore them and that kind of stuff. I mean, we do it all the time, and but so much of that plays into stigmas, whether it be mental health or it be substance abuse. If I give this person money, they're going to go buy drugs. Our government has made drug use such a criminal nature, that society in general, we hate it. And so since we hate a substance, then we're obviously going to hate the people that take the substance.
Mm-hmm.
And when we hate things, we don't really want to deal with it. And that's where I think there's, the stigma kills people. It's horrible, and mental illness, the same thing. Um, you see the people walking down the street talking to themselves. These are not people that just want to be talking to themselves, randomly yelling at themselves and yelling at something that we don't actually see. These are people that have a mental illness, that they're ultimately dealing with. And that's the other thing with, so many people think of like with drug users that, and the one that bothers me the most is when people say like addiction's a choice, right? Who chooses addiction? I mean, it's like I could say, my, choosing, my initial decision to use a substance was a choice, but who decides addiction is a choice? It doesn't make any sense,
Yeah.
you know? And so many people, and I look at my life and I think about, when I was running around out there using and getting arrested and posting bail and getting arrested and posting bail and getting arrested. The only reason I was doing that was because I felt like I needed to get out of custody so that I could get high. I mean, it was such a, that necessity. I hated my life. I hated myself. I hated everything about it. And so for anybody that thinks that, these people live this life like I want to be doing this stuff is crazy.
Yeah.
You know, these are people that typically need help, and unless we go out there and we try to, number one is we've got to take away the horrible stigma, and we've got to take away some of these consequences. That I mean, we had Trump as president that wanted to execute drug dealers. You know, I mean, it's like
Wow, I didn't hear about that.
yeah, I mean, you're putting these, so you're putting these messages, in people's head. Most of the drug dealers that we have in this country, are, and the ones that would get caught are the low guys, the little guys. They're the ones that go out there. They're doing it to support their own habit. They're sick, and they're addicted. And now we're saying, well, we're going to kill you if you get caught doing this, you know. And it's. I was talking to my wife recently. We were talking about, the the government, the Constitution, for instance. We have these Bill of Rights. That your property shall not be searched without a warrant and blah 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 all this stuff. Well, the drug war violates the Constitution every day. I mean, people always talk about like my Bill of Rights, and police officers get break into people's houses to catch them for drug offenses without search warrants or proper warrants. They do it all the time, you know, and so that's just another thing that nobody seems to fight for. Everybody's like, oh, Second Amendment, we want to fight for Second Amendment, right? Or we want to freedom of speech, or we want, we'll fight all of them then. We need to fight for all of them. And as you can see, I get passionate about this.
Yeah, it's a lot about it. Like you know a lot about it. Let's put it that way. And that helps people. Like the people that know like to have political arguments. They kind of know a lot about it. From research or just watching it. So you have it from being a substance abuse counselor and probably being educated in that.
Yeah, the one podcast I do, Walk a Mile in My Shoes, is that one's on controversy, really. I mean, it really was, me and my co-host Lona, we get into, politics, we get into religion, we got into the drug war, and then we actually had, it was really kind of cool. We had an opportunity, we interviewed Tommy Chong, for Cheech and Chong. So we had Tommy Chong on our show
Mm.
because he was one of the greatest victims of the war on drugs. He was arrested and sent to federal prison for bongs, which is just glass. I mean, he's not even selling drugs. It's
Wow.
just glass that's formed into a, you know, and so he went to federal prison for that.
Wow. Was
And
this after the movies or
yeah,
was?
this was well after. This
Oh
was
man, that is war on crime on drugs. Wow.
Yeah. Well, and it was funny because in his indictment, they actually made mention in his indictment about the movies that they made, about Up in Smoke or about Still Smoking, those movies, um, which to me again shows you how much because they kind of talked about how they made fun of the police, you know, they made fun of the federal agents, right? Well, again, that's freedom of speech there, you know. You got every right in the world to do that. And so why would you bring that into an
Yeah,
indictment?
that's exactly what you're talking about here.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so for me, it's like I mean, like as far as Cheech and Chong and the movies go, I kind of lived the lifestyle of a skateboarder, and that's how come I got involved in
Mhm.
alcohol and weed mostly. Um, and yeah, so my friends and all of us were surrounded by this environment, so that kind of was conducive to it. Also, like the pain involved in skateboarding, it was also like a way to medicate against the pain. Like I'd get hurt one day, and then I'd go drink it, drink it away, and drink away the pain. I didn't have medications back then.
Yeah.
Um, but I was wondering what you think about like the environment. You've heard about environment or nurture or nature or nurture, right?
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
how much of that is comes into play with substance use?
I honestly think that there's a lot more regarding the nurturing factor versus nature. I mean, everybody always talks like genetically predisposed. They
Yeah.
think that they found a genetic cursor to alcohol. I don't know how that plays out into other drugs, but one of the theories is that there's a pleasure deficiency within people that have addiction, because again, you always ask the question like, why can some people do it and other people can't, responsibly. Although I've never really known a responsible meth user, so or a responsible crack smoker, right? You know, but but alcohol, for instance, why can some people drink, some people can't? But nurturing, I don't know if you ever, the Vietnam War, for instance, was a great example
Right.
of environment, right? Because so many of, the vets, somebody when they were in Vietnam, we had a lot of them addicted to heroin. A lot of them were addicted to heroin, smoking a lot of weed, and all that kind of stuff. And a good majority, when they came back home, they just stopped. They just quit, and it's they didn't have any problem with it. And so that shows you right there how much environment can really play into your problems. The environment that
Hmm.
your upbringing, with now again, there's no perfect scenario on this because they've done lots of studies. They've done twin studies, where they had one child that grew up in one family and then grew up in another family. One of them had a substance abuse problem, one of them didn't. And then they never found, perfect answers to any of this. Um, but I think honestly, if number one is if you're growing up in a family where you're watching your parents solve all their problems by drinking or smoking crack or you know doing meth or doing heroin or whatever it is, um, that naturally is going to give you a message that this is how we do things,
Yeah.
right?
It's a very
Um,
common story.
yeah, and I think you see that a lot. But then my story though is different. My story, I didn't grow up with with parents that were, um, addicted to substance. Well, my dad was a cigarette smoker, but so was everybody else back then. but, but, um, but I didn't, they didn't have alcohol problems. They didn't have drug problems or anything like that. And so I think with my story, though, I think that I was dealing more with, again, like depression or an uncomfortability in life. And then the first substance that I abused was alcohol. And I remember drinking the first time in my life and just taking this drink and going like, oh my God, this is the best thing ever. I feel better, you know, I'm more outgoing. I feel more confident, right? Um, and that's what meth was for me too. That's been my fight with dealing with adolescents today. And I would love to do this, to be able to go in and speak to adolescents in schools, because I think it's done wrong. You know, I think the way that we deal with our youth is done completely wrong. You know, what was it? What was the one forever? What's the program they do in schools? Um,
Dare.
Dare. Okay.
Yeah.
So Dare, I think is, and a lot of times it's a police officer, right? And a police officer will come in, and they'll try to scare kids. They'll try to, you know, and I think it's a horrible method to do, because once you lie to somebody, or you get the person to at least think you're lying, then you've lost them, right? Especially kids. And so, if you've got people in school that have done meth, for instance, and this was kind of my thing, was, meth was in my substance of abuse, and
Mm-hmm.
somebody comes in, and at that point in time, I had no negative consequences. Everything about it was positive, right? Gave me constant confidence, made me more outgoing. I felt good, felt at the top of the world, right? And then you get somebody that comes in and says drugs are bad, right? Drugs are bad. There's bad consequences. Everything's horrible. I'm instantly going to go, this person's lying. They have no idea what they're talking about, because I never experienced any of that, right?
Yeah.
And so that's one of the reasons I think that so many of those programs fail. That's why my podcast, my recovery podcast, is called High Wall Clean, right? And that's based on the premise that highness is not a property of drugs; it's a property of people, right? And so you don't get high on drugs anyways, right? You get high on your own chemicals. It's dopamine, dope, right? Dopamine is the neurotransmitter that is the neurotransmitter of pleasure that happens in the mid part of our brain. So, I do cocaine, for instance. All cocaine does really is it blocks the reuptake of dopamine. That's really primarily all it does. Plays a little bit into epinephrine and norepinephrine, which has to do with energy, but that's primarily what it does. And so I'm not getting high on the coke. I'm getting high on my own chemicals. And so that's why I end every one of my shows with keep getting high, but let's do it clean, right? Because
Yeah.
that's the real message that I think people need to realize, is that the word highness shouldn't be correlated with drugs, right? We need to redefine that definition, because that comes from me. I can get high every day. I'm getting high right now, right? Not drugs, but just in our communication here, right? I get this pleasure. I feel good, um, and that's dopamine. Right? So we can do that every day. And I don't have the cool thing about it. I have these shirts. I made these shirts. One of the shirts says, "High Wall Clean." It's free. It's legal. It's free. It's legal, and there's no side effects.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. That's kind of like I used to say I get high on life all the time, so that's
Mhm.
similar.
Yeah. Yeah. Because we don't have to deal with, I mean, people can do extreme cases. You can go jump out of an airplane, you know, a real, if you look at like a real natural methamphetamine high is an intense scare. That's really what, if you look at the neurotransmitters, a
Mm.
really, really intense scare is a natural methamphetamine high because you get a release of dopamine, epinephrine, norepinephrine, and serotonin. And all of those are dopamine is that pleasure. Epinephrine is a neurotransmitter, but as a hormone, we call it adrenaline. Norepinephrine is to do with your mental energy, which plays into ADHD, and then serotonin is your emotional stability. All of those, when you have a really, really intense scare, that's what you get. Um, a natural heroin high is exercise, right? You want to get the natural heroin high, go out and exercise, and then we call it the runner's high, right? But that's
Hmm.
exactly what it is. You get a release of endorphins, which is your body's own natural painkiller, and then you naturally get a release of dopamine, you know. And so we can all do it natural, and there's no side effects.
Yeah, I like that. I feel like that's the goal, right? That's the
Mhm.
goal. So I wanted to ask you a little bit about. So this is the first episode I've ever said anything about me actually having a mental illness, and so I
Right.
feel like I'm even a little bit like, oh, the stigma's gonna be there, and like I'm gonna get like, I don't know, like weird messages or something, and I've asked questions like this online before, like to just on like Quora or something, and I would get a bunch of weird answers, and I wonder if some of the people had mental illnesses or something that answered, or if
Mhm.
they were just like kind of attacking me or something. So I was wondering if you could talk about how it was like, you know, how it was transferring into the world of like publicity,
Mhm.
public, uh, you substance use, and like talking about your substance use in public.
I think with my story, I think it'll be a little different just because my, depth of addiction and mental illness, things like that, were so ingrained in me that I think a lot of my life, is either my family, having, because I got arrested 4 times before I even turned 18. And so, and then I ran off with the Grateful Dead. I don't know if you know the Grateful Dead.
Yeah, that
Uh,
was that was the first concert I ever went to. Was a Grateful
did
Dead
you?
concert. Yeah.
Hey, wait, when was that? What year was that?
It was a few years before Jerry died. It was like when I was, let's see, it was like when I was 17, or I probably was like 17, so that was 2000, and maybe even 16, so that was 1996, around there. Yeah.
Nice. That's awesome, man. Yeah, he died in 90, or yeah, he died in, well, he died in 95.
Oh, okay, so it must have been even younger. Wow, that's amazing. So it might have been 1994 when
Yeah.
I was 14 or something.
This is something I burned, right? This is all the dead Grateful Dead, right? You got Jerry Garcia, you got Pigpen, Ron McGurnan, Keith Godshaw, Brent Midland, and then Vince Welnick. They're all and of course, all four of these guys right here, with the exception of Jerry, were all keyboardists.
Oh,
that,
okay.
that was the instrument of death for the dead.
Huh. Yeah, there's like
Yeah,
for hours.
yeah. Well, you got it because Pigpen died of his liver hemorrhage when he was on the 28 list, right? All the
Hmm.
musicians died at that age. He died at 28, and then Keith Godshaw died in an accident, but Brent Midland died of a speedball, um, and then Vince Welnick committed suicide. but
Wow.
and then of course Jerry died in rehab in '95. But yeah. So anyways, I spent a lot of years from like 90. I was like 90 to 95 when Jerry died, kind of running around with the dead, doing that whole scene and stuff.
Hmm.
Um, and and then of course I did lots of custody time, and so my life, so it was almost kind of out there in a lot of ways. My and then of course I got into the field. Most people that get into that field. Um, but here's what I want to say. Here's what I'd say about
Okay.
this. You may be surprised, or may not be, how many people have dealt with it, right? Um, Most people, if not everybody on this planet, either knows somebody is somebody that probably has a family member, you know, that has dealt with substance abuse, or or mental illness, you know, in some way, shape, or form. It's not as, you know, I mean, you got doctors, you got lawyers. I did a show. This is the coolest one. She's retired now, but there was a federal judge, right? She wrote a book called From Junkie to Judge, right? And so all the way up until she was like 28 years old, she's slamming speed, you know, doing the same stuff I was doing basically, and then decided to go to law school, became a federal judge at some point in time. She's now
Yeah.
retired, you know, and so, you know, so many people, you know, have had problems with it. Now, you know, what state do you live in?
California.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I'm in California too. So California, of course, we're a much more liberal state. You know,
Yeah.
it's not as you know, now you go to, you know, some like Texas or some of these other places, you know, where you even got people like Ted Cruz, you know, that's like saying like we shouldn't even give driver's licenses to people that have drug offenses, you know, um, which again I think is absolutely insane. And I guarantee he's probably got family members that, you know, have dealt with it himself. And so, but personally, um, it's cool you brought that up though. I mean, because again, and this is what I like, man, and I love what you do, what you're doing, because it is so important to let people out there know that we're not fucked up people. Oh, excuse me. I don't know
That's
if you-
cool. Beep.
But yeah, but we're not bad people. You know what I mean? I mean, that's the point behind it. It's like, yeah, sure. If you knew me while I was using, you would definitely have not have been somebody that you know would want to have known me. You know, I
Yeah.
did a lot of bad things, you know, as a result of my addiction. Now it was to support my own habit, right? Um, but you know, I'm clean and sober today. I got off the dope. I don't use anything, right? I don't even drink alcohol or nothing. And but I want to show the world that we're not bad people, you know, that we can do good things. I spent many, many years taking during my addiction. For today, I spend years and years and years giving back and trying to help people, you know, and I no longer take from society. I work to help society, you know, and so, but it took, and the way that I see this is that it took what it took for me to get to where I'm at today. You know, if I didn't live the life that I lived, then I wouldn't be doing what I do today. You know, and I say that to everybody that, you know, has dealt with different things in their life. You know, that good friend of mine, Jody Barber's. I always mention her, but her son died of an overdose in 2010. He was 19 years old. And then she went out on this just fighting rampage of, you know, created documentaries. You know, her big thing was you know, over prescribing doctors and stuff.
Hmm.
But she's now like this huge advocate. You know, people go to her every day and ask questions. And, you know, I have a son that's dealing with this. What can I do to help? So she, you know, as a result of the death of her son, right? Her son had to die for her to get to where she's at today, you know? And so it sucks. I mean, that life is like that, but it is, that is the way it is, you know? And so, you know, it's like you go through the things that you go through in life, and now you get an opportunity to share to the world and say, hey, this is what I've dealt with, you know, and there's help out there for you. You give your ideas, you give your recommendations, and maybe you help one person. If it's just one person, then it can be all worth it. You know, that's the way I mean, you know, like in the field right now, the amount of clients that die, you know, they'll come into treatment, they'll get better, they leave, they'll go do fentanyl or do another drug that's got fentanyl in it, they die, right? And so, so many people ask, like, how do you do this? How do you work in this field where you've got people that you work with die? And that's my answer. You know what? If I help one person, then it's all worth it, you know, because I can't focus on, all the bad, I'd rather focus much more on the good and what can we do. And if people come at you with, negativity and stuff like that, I wouldn't even trip on it, to tell you the truth, because, you have a story, and your story can turn out to be the greatest thing in the world for somebody, you know, and it also feels good, man.
Yeah.
Doesn't it?
Just being open about it and being able to talk about it and kind of just be have a little banter and like discussion. It definitely feels good, and it's probably better than talking with my doctor. I'll tell you that much.
Yeah, and it just feels good. I mean, it feels good to get things out, and then you're not living, you don't like my book, for instance. I put so much information out there, and I was worried about it because I put a lot of stories out there of things that I had done that I wasn't even arrested for. And you always kind of go into this question of like, well, shit, can they bring it back, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And so, but I was like, you know what? I just put it out there, and nothing's come back. Everything's good, and I've had a lot of people read the book, and a lot of people come back and said it was really beneficial and it was really helpful for them. Great, you know, and it was all worth it. I didn't write the book for me, you know,
Yeah.
although I
Well,
learned a lot about myself by doing it, though.
yeah, definitely. So could you tell us, go into a few minutes about the books and the podcasts and the radio show? What's up with that?
Yeah, so the book is "Pain, Failure, and Misery Are the Stepping Stones to Success," which is exactly the kind of the thing that I was mentioning. It's like the more pain that I go through in life, the bigger lessons I have. The more misery, quote unquote, that I go through in my life, the more I have an opportunity to help other people going through it. Um, and for so the book's broken in three parts. The first one is sort of my story, and then it goes a step into the unknown, and then the third part's the stepping stones to success. So I kind of talk about things that people can do. It's a true crime story slash self-help book, you know, slash self-growth, kind of thing, for people to improve. Now my podcast, again, I got High Wall Clean, which is a podcast on recovery. I've had a lot of great guests on the show, um, from actors, musicians, to people just telling their own stories, which are one of my favorites, of and their messages of hope, basically. So, and then I have Walk a Mile in My Shoes, which I mentioned was more of a controversy, more of a podcast of controversy. We get into politics, religion, um, everything that everybody says don't talk about, we talk about. And it's based on the idea that we want to learn if we can walk in other people's shoes, that's how we can understand things. We had one of the guests, we've had some crazy guests, but one of them was the lady from the Westboro Baptist Church. I don't know if you've ever heard of them, but they're
No, I could
classified
guess.
as the most hated church in America. They're they go around protesting is their big thing. They protest. LGBTQ is their big one, right? Their website's godhatesfags.com, so that kind of gives you an idea of
Yeah.
of their message. But we had her on the show. I had this guy Jeff Scoop on the show, which was also cool because he was the head of the NSM, the National Socialist Movement, the largest neo-Nazi organization in the country. He was the leader of them for 27 years, and he just walked away from them. And all of a sudden, everything changed. His belief system changed. He now has an organization called Building Beyond Me, which actually works to fight against extremism, which is what they stood by. And so he's a great story of like do we deserve redemption? I guess you could say, right? Um, and then I also I also have a radio show called Hot Topics, and it's on Johnny Rock and Roll Radio. You can go to johnnyrockandrollradio.org. It's internet radio, and catch that show. So yeah, so you can go to my website. My website is highwalkclean.org. Remember, high walk clean, right? Getting high, walk clean. Highwalkclean.org, and you can kind of see links to everything out there, from all my YouTube stuff to all the audio. Pretty much all my shows are on YouTube, all audio stations, and so yeah.
Cool. Yeah, that's easy to remember. Highwellclean.org. It's a
Yeah.
great tagline. I want a shirt that says that. That'd be awesome.
Yeah, I'll send you one, man.
Oh yeah, okay.
Yeah.
I'll wear it. I'll definitely rock it.
Cool. All right. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks for being on the show today.
Yeah.
And it's been great talking with you.
Thank you, man. I really appreciate it. I love talking about recovery. I love talking about substance abuse and mental health. Get the message out.